Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us again. I'm assuming it's again because this is the fourth session of our volume builder exploration, if you like. And hi to our expert trainers. Hi Elly, hi Darrin, hi Jonas, and hi Matt.
Hey Simon. Hey everybody.
So I'll give you a little bit of info and background. We have some news about sessions that are coming up as well. But you can find all the sessions that are coming up on the Maxon page. If you go to maxon.net and just go under news and events, then you can see what's happening. So for example, today we've got volume builder workflows, and we'll be looking at this week, January 25th, the fourth of the series. Elly's going to be creating some fun fire simulation stuff and then handing it over to Darrin and seeing what we can do with Redshift there. So more about that in a second. But I just wanted to remind you that if you go to this page, you can see what's happening in February as well, where we have 4 sessions about solving problems before they happen when you are shooting and grading. So we've got the usual crew, the color team are joining us back again. And also we've got some special guests from Canon and Sigma who'll be talking about Canon's cameras, and also how you then can use different lenses to solve different problems in the grade. So it's all sorts of interesting stuff there. So you can sign up for that too. And also, yes, all these sessions are recorded, as you probably know by now. And if you go onto the Maxon Training Team site, so here's it on YouTube, Maxon Training Team, you'll see all these various sessions. So here's last week's volume builder session. And in fact, if you look on those, just let's have a drop down here, you'll see this is what we did last week. And also you have a list of the links and extra information that we mention each week, including those wonderful project files that we provided as a download link. So if there's anything that you wanted to check out on this link, also go to the recording, because you might be able to, or you will be able to see those relevant files that we link there. Great. And also thank you to our regular tech testers. So thank you, Kent, all looking and sounding good. This is great. Greetings, Stephen, to you from to Toronto, I should say. And hi, Logan, hi, Simon, hi, Stephen. And also, I did mention last week there'll be an open beta of Redshift for Mac. We'll add that onto the link for this week, but also before we wrap up at the end, in fact, I'll put on your very question the link to that one as well. Great. And as usual, it wouldn't be an intro session if I didn't mention, hey, grab a free t-shirt. And the code is demystifying, and the link's inside the YouTube page, and we send an email link out afterwards. And also, please feel free to test yourself on these knowledge tests. This is the free knowledge test, which ranges for all those different topics that are featured in the certification test that we researched. And Darrin put all these amazing questions together so that you can just check out to see where you need to investigate if you'd like to further your cinema knowledge. And last but not least, hot off the press, we have, starting next week, Lionel is back. He's going to do 3 special sessions for us using Redshift to create fantasy titles. And he's going to jump into X particles as well, and also a volume builder. And then on the 3rd session, he's going to composite everything together convincingly using SuperComp. So that's next week. That's 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of February. We'll have the link in all the usual places, but also you'll be able to see that later on today, I believe, on the Maxon site. Great. So I think that's it. That's only 4 minutes. That's much quicker than I usually do it, isn't it? Maybe. Great. So I also want to hand over to, it's you, Elly, aren't I? I'll hand you to you first.
No, it's Darrin, actually.
No, it's not.
Yeah, sorry. We were talking behind the scenes.
We changed it. Okay. All right.
Last minute.
Last minute change. All right. No worries. We can do that. We have the power. So I shall make you a presenter, Darrin.
Thank you. Show my screen, and let's hide all webcams. Can you see my Cinema 4D?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm starting out today. Today, we're going to continue our theme with volumes, and we're going to be focusing on like fire and smoke effects using Redshift and the volume builder. But I want to start out showing another volume effect that can be achieved with Redshift, and that's using lights. We can get this, we can get some environmental, or if you're familiar with Cinema 4D's traditional lighting system, volumetric light. So here I have a pretty basic example, and I want to build it back up real quick before I jump into the volume builder. So let me delete this environment object, and let's turn this all off. So all I have is a motext and a plane. I'm going to go ahead and drop in a Redshift area light. And let's get this into position. I'm going to move it behind the text and rotate it around so it's now facing the text. And let's go ahead and start the Redshift Viper. So I can see that light and that shadow, and that's cool. But now I actually want that volumetric light. So what we want to do is go to the volume tab of the light and turn that up. And we don't see anything. What we need to have this volume metric light calculated is we need to add the Redshift object called Redshift environment to the scene. Now, because it comes in with this default general scattering parameter of 0.1, we get this incredibly dense volumetric light. I'm going to turn this down. Even if we go halfway, and it's not much of a difference. So I'm going to go like pretty low here. And it has to get really low to start getting the result I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put that in the middle, and then I'm going to go to the area light and turn down its contribution scale, how much is actually contributing in here. So let's see, let's unlock the camera. And another thing is the Redshift area light has a spread. And right now this is basically like 180 degrees. If I bring this in, it narrows it. So we have a more narrow spread of that light, which I like. Let's bring it down a little closer to the text. There we go. And now the problem, one of the problems I have with this is that this fog is just too uniform, and it's still too dense. One thing that's going to help address both of these is adding noise to this. What we want to do here is use a special type of Redshift material preset, and that's actually this RS noise. Let me delete that. I'm going to add it new. So go to the Create menu to Redshift, and then this one is under Utilities. Now in the Materials menu, you'll notice there is a volume material. We're going to get to that shortly. But when you're working with the volumetric light or environment, and you want to add noise there, then you want to add this utility shader, the noise volume. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag that onto the environment object. And because there's already a noise in here, it's darkening it. We can see that it's not totally uniform. And we can make this even more obvious by going into this shaders graph and adding a ramp in here, and then connecting the noise to the ramp input, and then sending that out to the volume input of the output node. And now I can just go to the ramp here and bring up, bring this up so that there's more of the, more black. Can bring the white in. So, we can get more contrast, and we can slide it around and sort of find a sweet spot. Oh, why is my view not updating? Let's go here. There we go. So this is how we can get some noisy volumetric light. And this is great when we just want to add that with our lights, but when we actually want some 3D volumetrics, like we've been seeing, but we want it to be like foggy or misty, or we want fire, there's a number of different ways to approach all of this. So right off the bat, what we can do is we can, for example, we can take whatever model we have and we can turn it into a fog volume by putting it into a volume builder, setting that to the fog type. I'll reduce my voxel size here. Let's try 5. And then let's go ahead and start the Viper again. Oh, where'd my go? Right here. And not saying anything. What we need is a special, that other type of volume material. So I'm going to add that from the Redshift materials menu down there, volume. Now this I'm going to put onto the volume builder. Don't even need a mesher here, but I need to tell this material, the RS volume node, what it is going to be loading, which volume builder to load. So if I call this volume builder txt, then in the channel here under scatter, I'm going to click on this little drop down menu and go to volume builders and choose that volume builder txt. And now I'm getting a fog volume there. Now the scatter is basically the color or diffuse. The absorption is basically the transparency, and then emission is the luminance. So there's that. Now we can control the density of this a number of different ways. We can, like, if we're going to turn down the absorption or the transparency to like 0.2, then it's suggested to also turn down the scatter to about the same so that they stay matched. And there we go. At 0.1, we're starting to, it's not quite as dense. And this is one way to tweak the density of this, of these fog volumes. Let's put these back to 1 because there's another way that I like, and that's in the advanced tab of the RS volume node. We have a density remap range. What we can do is we can go to the old max and we can turn that up, okay? And we get similar result here. Or we can go to the new max and turn that down. So this is let's see, 1/10, okay, of what it was. And we have this result, which ends up being the same as the old max being 10 times what it was. So this is some ways to control the density. And that's all fine and dandy. But when we're doing like fire, that's a very complex interaction of fuel and combustion, and we have a lot of color changing. What we can do is we can add color here. If I go to the scatter remap ramp, I can add like this flame 1 preset, and then we can, using what I showed you previously, we can tweak these values, but we don't get the animation, we don't get the levels of interest in a flame or in fire or an explosion. Now, let's see, Jonas showed us last week an explosion he created with Legos, but he downloaded an explosion file, and we have a link for you to the OpenVDB downloads page where you can check out some downloads for you. But when we want to make them here in Cinema 4D, one option we have is to use X particles. So I'm actually going to toss this over to Elly if Elly's ready, and she'll show you.
Sure.
Awesome. And yeah, and Elly will show us how to do a a basic X particle setup and how to export that. And then I'm going to import one that she sent me like a week ago or so. So let me
Fair enough.
stop.
Got a
Yeah,
quick
please.
question. Whilst you hand it over to Elly, perhaps you could think about, we had a question in from Izami about how could you do something similar in Redshift, in Cinema 4D without using Redshift. And we've answered, I think Jonas has answered about how this is a specific Redshift technique, if you like. But if you're approaching this and you just have Cinema, was there's a particular way or particular area to look at?
That's something that I've been thinking about. We'll get back to that one.
Okay.
When it comes to the lights, yes, there's volumetric lights in Cinema 4D. When we want this type of when we want a cloud or smoky effect within geometry, like we're getting here, then we need actually to yeah, we'll have to get back to that because I'm afraid
Okay.
the
No
answer might
worries.
be that we don't have that. But we'll check. We'll speak with Jonas and everyone, and we'll figure something
Absolutely.
out.
The official answer is, hey, this is why it's so great that Redshift pairs with Cinema.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's a fair question.
that's very, very true. Let's see. So let's go sharing or attendee staff, and there's Elly. You ready, Elly?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so make presenter. Yes.
Cool. Thanks. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, so as Darrin said, I'm going to show you how to create quite like a simple fire simulation using exposure effects, which is part of like the X Particles tools. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the simulation using a lot of like default settings, and then we're going to export it as a VDB sequence. So what we'll do, we'll start off by coming up to X Particles. So exposure effects can be found in the Dynamics tab here. So if we check that, what's going to happen is if I press play, nothing's going to happen because we need something to be sort of like the source of our fire simulation. So if I come up and actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to grab a sphere. I'm just going to make it like 20 centimeters. And if I right click on my sphere, come to X Particles tags, we get a exposure effects source. So if I get that, and I've got my little tag now on my sphere, and now if I press play, we can start to see our simulation. So in our tag settings, at the moment, I've got solid checked, and so it's using the sphere as kind of like a solid source, whereas what I want to do, I want to use the outside of my sphere. So if I uncheck that and go back and play it again, we get sort of like the outside of our sphere is now kind of the source of our fire. And so we've got a few other settings in our tag here. We've got things like smoke, heat, fuel. So all pretty self-explanatory. If I kind of increase the amount of smoke and play it back, we get a lot more smoke added to our simulation. With heat, what's happening is that our 100% heat is kind of forcing our simulation kind of up, whereas if I make that 0, it will go down, and that's because we haven't got the heat kind of propelling our fire kind of upwards. With fuel, you have to have at least some fuel. So I couldn't put this down to 0 because like a real fire in the world, if there's nothing to fuel the fire, nothing will happen. And so if I play it, you can see that we won't get any simulation. So you have to at least have some fuel. These other settings affect kind of like the look of your simulation. So curl, velocity, pressure. If I increase pressure, it's all going to kind of explode out. And so what's cool about kind of like the exposure effects is it's really using just this tag here, you can really define your simulation. So let me just, what was that on? Was that on 10? Yeah. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'll show you a couple of the settings in the Exposure FX tool as well, before then showing you how you can export it. So we're going to look at the solver. So we've been doing a lot of like volumes this month, and we see a lot of this voxel size, and we've got that in our Exposure FX solver. So if I increase my voxel size up to like 20, we're going to have a much lower resolution simulation. So if I play this through, you can see how we haven't got kind of the level of detail that we had when the voxel size was set to 4 centimeters. Also, I'm going to let it play through, and what's happening is if we look up here, it's kind of hitting our bounding box and like spreading out almost like it's hitting a ceiling. And that's down to the size of our bounding box here. So if you didn't want that to happen, there's a few different ways of doing that, but one would be kind of increasing the Y of your bounding box, and then you wouldn't have that happen. Cool, so the next tab we'll look at is simulation. So I'm just going to look at these two sort of parameters here, which is our simulation scale and speed. And so what's interesting with the scale is if I put this down to like 20, what will happen is our simulation will happen much quicker. And that's because if you think of like the flame of a match or a candle, it's much smaller and it all kind of like burns and happens much faster than, let's say, like a giant bonfire, or like if, I don't know, like a house was on fire. And so depending on what kind of simulation you're doing, on what is happening in your scene, you can kind of affect the scale here. And the same with sort of like your speed, like the faster you want your sim, you can increase it and decrease it. So quite sort of like easy to understand tools in the Exposure FX, which is why I like it so much. And the final one we're going to look at is, let's say you've got your simulation ready and it's all kind of like good to go. You can actually use this UpRes tab and it will increase, you can start to increase like the quality and the resolution and the detail of your simulation. Cool, right, so that's all I'm really going to go into with this, because I'm aware that not everyone will have X particles who is watching this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hide my sphere. I'm just going to double check that my simulation's all fine. Oh, wait, hang on.
Can you do me a favor, Elly?
Yeah.
Right there in the solver tab, I just want to draw everyone's attention to that color channel, which can be enabled.
Yep.
Yeah, because I don't have that in my file, I believe, but that is an important one, and I'll show you why when we switch.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Cool. Right, so now let's take a look at how we can export this as a VDB sequence. So what I'm going to do, come up to X particles, we have this XP cache. So I'm going to check that, and then down here you have like your normal caching options. So you kind of like where you want to save it, things like that. And what we can do for this, we can come into our EFX format here, and we have open VDB. And then we'd build our cache as normal. And then what we would then get is this file here. And this is our VDB sequence. And what's cool about this is, for example, Darrin doesn't have X particles, but I was able to create this fire simulation. I was able to export it as a VDB sequence and then send him that data. And then he's going to use that within Redshift to read and render the data. And yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, that was, I guess I can pass it back to you, Darrin. You can show them how to make it look super cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'll show them how to make it cool.
Cool, let me just send that back. Cool. So yeah, if anyone has any questions on like X particles or anything, yeah, just drop them in the chat and I'll answer them now.
Thanks, Elly.
No worries.
Okay, so let's pop that camera back on. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and load up the export that Elly gave me a week or two ago. And Jonas actually showed us how to do this once already. In the volume menu, we have the volume loader, and that's what we want to use. So here under file name, let's see if I can get away with dragging and dropping this in. So here's the exported sequence that Elly gave me. I'm gonna see if I can drag that in. And I get all these options for the volume import, and I'm gonna leave them all at default. But here you can see volume grids, density, fuel, heat. This is where the color would also appear. And I'll show you why that's important in a moment. So awesome, that's loaded up. I can now press play. Now I can see that this goes to frame 119. So I'm gonna go ahead and set my project length to 119. So here you can see that I don't have the color, okay? And there's only so much that we can do without that color data. So let's see in fact what that is. Let me actually copy this, and I'm gonna go to my fog scene and paste it. So when I did the drag and drop, it just created a new scene and gave me the volume loader. So let's get a new Redshift volume material for this one, and I'm gonna name it Fire VOL, and I'm gonna apply it to this volume loader. And let's see, here is that volume loader. Let's go to 119, let's press play. Let's hide all this. There we go, it's just a little far down, so I'm gonna drag it up and show everything. Okay, there we go, rewind and play. There we go, there's that. Let's stop about here, press play. Now remember, when we create a Redshift volume, we have to tell it which volume builder or loader to use. So I'm going to go to the channels here and go to the volume loader. And here I have those channels. So I'm going to go with density for the scatter. And for the absorption, we just have a color channel. Now, we don't, we can still load any of these, but it doesn't actually have the color data. So instead, what we can do is apply color in this remap ramp. So right now it's black to white. I can load a preset, let's say Flame 1. There we go, and we can see that it's awfully dense. Let's see, let's go to, I mean, we can try, we can explore some of these options, but I definitely want this to glow. Let's turn off the text. So I'm going to go in to the emission down here, and I'm going to load, I'm going to try heat. Okay, and I'm going to load that same ramp or gradient, Flame 1. There we go. So it's, it's pretty dense, and intense. So one thing we can do to tweak that is in the light, turn down that contribution scale. Is this the, let's refresh here. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I actually expected that to affect the brightness of this. As it's not, what I'm going to do is go back to the Redshift volume material, and in its advanced settings, I can tweak the options here to bring that density down and fiddle with it. But let's go ahead and press play. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we all work together to create this scene with these canisters with this alien life growing in it, and I added a like nutrient mist to that. So let's actually shift gears here, and let me pull up the render. Here we go. And I'm gonna press play. Let me know how that playback is on your end. Is it sort of jumpy? Is it too fast?
Oh, it's okay. It's a bit, yeah, it's a bit kind of like jittery, but yeah, it plays
Always
back
going to
alright.
be so between 5 and 10 frames a second
Yeah.
through webinars like this, but actually it's not too bad.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm just manually dragging the playhead. And you can see in this middle canister that blue like alien life form started like growing, which Elly actually showed us, I think that was last week. But falling onto it inside this canister is a mist. And I want to show you how I set that up, because it's really interesting to get, it can be sort of tricky to get a not totally thick volume. So I want to show you how we can work with the volume builder, to achieve that. So let's close this. So in the original scene that Elly sent me, and for some reason, even though I turned off the volume builders, is still going, so I must have missed something. What I want to do is I want to get the something for a point of reference here for where the mist will be, how big it is. So I'm going to go into the cryo chamber new, and here we have an object that is the glass for this canister. So I'm going to copy it and paste it into a new scene. And let's unhide it. And what's important here is these parameters. Now I actually want this to be a solid cylinder, so I'm going to add a cylinder while holding shift, so it becomes a child. I think I need something like 128 segments. But if I look at the cryoglass, I have 59 inner, and I'm going to copy that height and go here. I'm going to paste that height, put in the same radius, and now I can get rid of that cryoglass. So this is like the basic starting point. Let's go ahead and switch to the Redshift renderer. Let's drop the cylinder into a volume builder and set that to fog with a lower voxel size, and create a new Redshift volume material, apply it to the builder, and tell it to use this volume builder right there. Okay, good. Let's fold that up. Okay, so let's go Redshift Viper. We're going to need a light in here. So I have the material on the builder, but we don't see anything. Maybe I didn't, I'm not sure if I actually mentioned this earlier, but we do actually need a light in the scene. And let's make this let's come around here. Let's make this a disk rather than a rectangle. Let's make it visible. There we go. So now we can actually see that there's a volume builder in there, but it's not being illuminated. That's why we got to go to this volume tab of the light, turn that up, just like we would with volumetric lighting. So let's go ahead and rotate this. Oops, wrong axis. Let's go -90, so it's looking down. Let's center this and move it up. And what I want is the outside of the cylinder to be soft and the inside to be the most dense. So what we can do in the volume builder is when we select the object in the builder, we get some unique parameters. We can, increase the maximum voxel fall off, and we can fiddle with that. But what I prefer to do instead is enable maximum voxel fall off, so that the outside of this volume is essentially a weight of 0, and the very center is 1. So we're getting a fall off here. Now I need this to be more disturbed. I want that sort of stringy mist. So what I need is a noise, and I'm going to add that from the random field. And let's go with a nutuous, or not tuous, or I don't even know how to pronounce that. And I'm going to add that in here. And this is not actually how I'm going to end up using it, but I want to point out that here we are starting to get that noise. We can go in, we can increase the scale of it. But what I'd rather do, instead of adding it directly like this, is I like to actually add a filter, the multiply filter. Now, if we multiply by 0, we get 0, right? And then if we go into this filter's fields tab, we can now use that random field to affect where the strength is, where this is, you know, masking the multiply. And I like this because it comes out just a little more, feeling a little more natural and softer. Now, to adjust the levels of this, we can play with the strength. We can crank that up, and we can bring in the inner offset. Okay, and we start getting all these individual voxels, which we can see. Lowering the voxel size will help reduce that, but that's not ideal because we'll end up with such a small voxel size that it can really slow things down. And there's a couple of other things that I want to focus on, like I want the top of this to be more dense and the bottom to be less dense. So I'm going to need a linear fall off here. So I'm going to go ahead and let's stop this. Let's add a linear field, which right now is on the X. Let's go to Y. And let's see, the length will make the same as the height of the cylinder. Actually, let's cut that in half. Okay, and I'm going to add another multiply in here. So this fog multiply I'm going to call noise multi. Okay, and then I'm going to add another multiply on top, and this will be linear multi. And again, I'm going to set this filter to multiply to 0. Let's go ahead and start the playback. So at 0, we see nothing. So I'm going to go to its fields, and I'm going to mask this fog multiply with the linear field. And I'm not really seeing where the start or the end is. So what I'm going to try here is going to its remapping and unfold its contour and set that to quadratic, and then I can bring this back. And there we go. So I can see this end is denser than this end. So I'm going to go to the linear fields field tab and set it to -y. There we go. So now it's more dense at the top than at the bottom. Great. Now when I press play here, we don't get any motion like we were seeing earlier. What I want to do to get that motion is a couple of things. One is I want to go to the random field and add some animation speed. So when I press play here, that noise is animated. Let's make this more dramatic. Okay, so that's 25%. It's very noisy, but hopefully you can see it's changing. But I also want it to fall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply, let's stop that and rewind. I'm going to keyframe the random field. So see, as I move it up, it's the whole thing, all that noise we can see is moving up. So let's go and set a keyframe here at frame 0, and then we'll go to frame 90, move it down, set a keyframe, and I want to make sure that this is linear interpolation. So it's just constantly moving. And now we can see that it's falling down as that noise is internally animated. And let's see, how are we doing on time? 20 minutes. So there's a number of other things that I added to my setup to sort of tweak it. But what kind of questions do we have so far?
We had actually a good question from Stephen about the texturing of the actual cryo chambers themselves. And I was going to just jump in later on and say, hey, don't forget Ask the Trainer on this Thursday, where we could actually do that. And more on that later, but that's one of the reasons why we introduced these extra Ask the Trainer sessions, so that we could jump in and ask those questions that we run out of time for. And it's always a bit of a balance, because we're always trying to add as much in as possible, but then not go too fast, and then answer side questions as well. So thank you for bearing with us. So we'll definitely feature that on Thursday.
Excellent.
There was also another question.
Yeah.
Thomas asked if you have both plugins, Xparticles and Redshift, is it possible to render the Xparticles volume directly using Redshift, or do you have to export it and re-import it using the volume loader?
You do not have to export and re-import. Redshift works with particle systems. Elly will be able to speak to this better than me. But you know, when you have a particle system, you can add the Redshift object tag to it, and you will get some unique settings in the Redshift object tag that you don't get when it's not on like an emitter, so that you can render the particles in Redshift.
Absolutely.
Let's see. So, you know, let's get back to the color of this, right? Because the light is white, right? So if this light is a different color, then this volume is going to pick that up. But what we can also do is, in the Redshift volume material that's on here, that RS volume node, where we have this ramp, you know, I showed you previously that we can add a gradient here, but another option is to just tint it. We can add a tint to this. Oh, that's absorption. So let's actually put that right there. There we go. And then we can, you know, what I ended up doing is increasing the old max so that it fell off a bit more. And let me actually show you the final setup that I did, because it is a file that we have to share, that I have to share with you. Let's see, recent files. Here we go. Okay. So you can see here in the end, I have the cylinder, multiply, I got a linear field, I got a curve, add, another multiply. A number of different filters in here to get a look. So let's see, let's get Viper going here. And let's see if this voxel size of 0.75 isn't too small for playback. It appears to be a bit too slow. So, but anyway, this is the final setup that that I used in the render. Let me stop the playback and show you that render again. Here we go. There we go. So it's just that mist that's falling in that center canister. Now, maybe you also notice at the bottom, there's some mist, some fog that's sort of settled on the bottom. That's a secondary a volume builder with its own material on it. But the setup of this mist we have as a C4D file to share with you. And, you know, I wanted to show you, you know, some other cool things that you can do with this, because there's a really great Cineversity tutorial on creating tune effects, and one of those effects is an explosion. And I went through that tutorial and had a lot of fun with it. But I thought, oh, this would be cool to add. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. To add volumes to. Now that tutorial is right here by Sebastian. Let's see here. Let's see if we get if he shows us the result. Okay, well, we'll just jump to the last video so you can see the result that he ended up with. So it's, this is all just solid geometry. And, he created we got a really cool tune looking explosion. I thought this would be great to add volumes to because it's based on the volume builder and meshing workflow. So I went through the tutorial, and we have that link that should be shared in the chat somewhere. And what I did was I basically, after completing it, I turned off the meshers, and then I created a different Redshift volume material for the fire volume builder, and there's also a volume builder for smoke. And then, I assigned, let's go to the fire one. Right there, double click that. So I, dropped in that flame gradient there. It's using the fire volume builder, and I actually already have this. Let's go ahead and start Viper here so you can see it. Okay, and I actually rendered this out. So let me pull up my picture viewer and show that to you right here. So I'm gonna step through this. So this is a result of combining the techniques that I showed you using the Redshift volume material and that tune explosion effects series. So it's, it's pretty cool. Let's see, we got, oh, okay, great. We got a little under 15 minutes left to answer more questions and see what maybe I might have missed. Any other questions popped up since I last asked? I'll take that as
we
no.
answered a few questions in the background.
Okay.
But I think we can get back to that question that we initially had about volumes and how to render them directly inside of Cinema 4D. And I personally don't know a way to do that. We used to have ProRender where it was possible, but Cinema 4D standard and physical are not capable of rendering volumes.
Do you not think that, let me copy this mode text. Do you not think that Pyrocluster, although a very old and outdated feature, might be an option here?
Do you think it might work with volumes?
Well, I haven't tried it. So let's take this mode text. We'll put it into a builder. I suspect that it's only going to work with the mesher of the volumes, right? We put that in the mesher. Yep. And we would go materials, and we need a volume tracer, and we need a pyrocluster material. The pyrocluster material, Normally I put this on particles, so this will be interesting. Let's throw that on there. I expect that it's not going to work on the builder, but we do need an environment object with this volume tracer on there. Let's close this and let's switch back. Okay, we're at standard. Let's render this. Yeah, so we're not seeing anything here. Let's try putting it on the mesher. Yeah, also nothing. Let's see. Just to make sure that I'm not missing something, I'm going to add a particle emitter here and go forward a couple of frames and apply the pyrocluster material to that and do a render. There we go. So it sees particles, but it's not seeing the volume mesher builder. Maybe what we would need would be to
Do you need the volume
emit.
builder on a fog mode? Would that work? Not in the emission, not
Give
in
it
the
a
mesh,
go.
just in a fog version. But it's, again, I don't think Pyrocluster was ever designed to work this way.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I think you are hitting the nail on the head there, Matt. Yeah. So fog makes no difference with the mesher. That too is not going to make a difference even in fog mode.
Well, the only way could be to create thinking particles in a grid and then reading out the values of all of the voxels and then apply Pyrocluster to it.
Yeah. I mean, so the short answer is we cannot do the exact same thing that Redshift does, and that's part of the what's so cool and the magic of Redshift. Did you want to give that a go, Jonas?
Which one?
What you were just suggesting about working with the particles.
I'm not going to make that in 8 minutes.
Yeah,
we could have that on Ask the Trainer as a couple of questions.
I've got
we've got a side.
Show.
Oh, sorry, go on, Elly.
Well, a couple of the guys were asking in the chat about so last week I was going to get to texturing the cryo chamber, but I didn't actually have time, and I've actually just got it up now.
Let's do it
on my screen, so I can really quickly just sort of show.
Perfect.
It shouldn't take too long.
Yeah, we
can everyone see my screen?
Now I can see your screen.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So back in week 1, Matt showed us how we model this using the volume builder and the mesher. And basically what he did, he created everything within the one volume builder. And so the downside to that is when we do texturing, we kind of like texture our volume mesher, and then if we put one texture on, it's all going to be the same texture. Basically, all you need to do is you can separate the elements into their own volume builder and volume mesher. So if you can see here on my screen, what I've got is I've got the glass alone, just sort of textured with this glass material, and then my next volume builder mesher is all kind of like the actual metal elements itself. And I mean, I could have split this up even more, but I guess I was a little bit lazy. And then my next one is these kind of like little copper caps here, and then the final one is this tube. So yeah, so to the people who are asking kind of how you can texture that cryo chamber, that's all you'd need to do, or whatever you're modeling kind of in the volume builder and mesher, if you just separate each element, then you can then add a material to each individual mesher to, yeah, so like that. I just thought I'd quickly show that while we've got a couple of minutes left, because people have been saying, and I felt bad that I didn't get to it last week.
Awesome. Thanks,
So, yeah,
Elly.
Excellent stuff, Elly. Cameron had a quick question, was relating to the motion of the mist inside the chamber. And is it possible to, say, wrap it to a spline so you could then animate the mist moving across a surface or something similar to that?
Let's see. Yes, we'd have to find, the best way to do that for the particular project, because there's a lot of ways to have something moving along a spline in Cinema 4D. Let's see here. Let's go to this is the more simple one. So we can use splines in the volume builder. So this is something I'm going to be trying from scratch here. Let's turn a couple of this stuff off. I'm going to front view, and using the spline pen, I'm going to draw a spline like so. I'll just put that there and hit escape. So it starts at the top, ends at the bottom. Okay, now let's drag that into the volume builder and put that at the bottom here. Now here we have some controls for along the spline, but that's really just how the spheres that are added from this volume builder, how they're scaled so that they can be smaller on the end. We don't necessarily have animation controls here. So what we would want would be something else that would actually be animated along the spline. So maybe, let's see. I mean, I'm already thinking of a couple of different ways. Like, let's increase the radius a bit and that density. Let's go maximum, fall off. Let's go Redshift, Viper, and start that. Okay, and now on top of this, we have that random and that linear field. So essentially what we have here is that spline as a mask. Let's go to just that. Let's turn down the strength of this noise multiply so that we can see a bit more of that noise on there. There we go. So we have the same noise within the world traveling the same way, but we only see it where the spline volume exists. Is this possibly a solution, or were you thinking of actually having something traveling along the spline, like in a cloner or a spline wrap or something?
I think it was referencing the actual containing it within the chamber, but then Cameron then also said about whether it's moving along a surface. So Cameron, if you wanted to just jump in quickly and define that, or just like I asked a follow-up one. Oh, hoping to see the mist noise move in the direction of the spline. That's it.
Oh, I'm not, honestly, I'm not sure because they're two separate objects. The spline's one object, and then the random field, its noise is a separate object. I mean, I don't know. We can try doing that, which I tend to avoid, and that's applying the random fields directly in there. But they're still two separate objects, so we're going to end up with a similar result. Yeah.
Cameron's asking if you could spline wrap the cylinder.
Yeah. Yeah, we can spline wrap anything. Let's stop here.
Yeah, he's asking if you've got the mist going in the cylinder in a particular way, could you then spline wrap the cylinder to a spline in order to make it look like that the noise is going in a particular direction? I don't really think you can, because as I say, the noise is an existent object, and we're just basically using a mask for it, aren't we?
Yes.
Well, we cannot deform volume grids. That's not possible. Volume grids are grids, and they will stay grids.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is about, let's go like this, let's put that back up to 100, is if this were to be alembic, like if this were an object, if we made this an object, like an alembic object, would that alembic object deform? Would that be spline wrappable? I haven't tried it with an I haven't tried spline wrap with an alembic asset. Let's see how quickly that would go. Bake as alembic. Let's just go desktop. Oops. Okay.
Drake is asking, could field forces be used in order to get something? Not with a noise overlay, but in theory you could get your own art directed tendrily gas stuff again, but then you just end up, I think, looking like what we've got growing in the cylinders rather than the mist.
You know what? I'm not I'm not sure how to, I guess it would have to be meshed.
Yeah.
But then we get a very different result. So it's a really interesting, issue
Conundrum.
and challenge, yeah, that we'd have to get back to.
I've got a great segue for this with one eye on the clock and to promote our Thursday Ask the Trainer session.
Yeah, I'm actually going to toss it to you, Simon, because.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why we love these sessions, is the interactive nature of it, and there's jumping in and trying something live. So that's really great stuff. So thank you for doing that, Darrin. That's so useful.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to say is that we can let you have this Cinema 4D file. Hopefully that's not a surprise to the team, but we thought that it would be useful. Now you've watched us play with this for a few weeks, we'll make that available to you. We'll add that to the download link, and which we'll put into the YouTube comments on the recording. And just in case you missed this at the beginning of the session, if you go onto YouTube and you just go onto here we go back here, the YouTube training team, or Maxon Training Team on YouTube, that's where we list all these things, and that's where you'll see the recording and all these download links. So those other things about the Open BDB and also the other links that on Cineversity that Darrin mentioned, we can put in on the links here too. So we'll share that download, and we'll share the link again on Thursday when we do our Ask the Trainer session. So we'll pick up on some of those themes, and if you've got any questions that you'd like to add in ahead of time, yes, we will definitely answer the question in full. We'll give it our best go and just like investigate a few other things. Right? That's the whole point of these sessions, really. But if you'd like to ask any questions in advance, please reach out to us, training@maxon.net. It will get to us, and that's very useful, especially that gives us more than 5 seconds to plan for something. But again, that's the whole point of doing these live questions, so we want to be helping. And also on Thursday, we are delighted to be joined by Daniel Hashimoto, the action movie dad himself. And he's done many tutorials over the years. Here's his YouTube channel, by the way, of Action Movie Kids. And he's also done a whole bunch for Red Giant. So here's one of his in the Cheap Trick series, where he's using Voronoi fracture to break up the surface to release the Kraken, I think the phrase is. So please, if you've got any questions for him or interested in how he goes about his workflows and comes up with his ideas and that sort of thing, let us know, because he'll be spending time with us on this Thursday on Ask the Trainer. You can find out how to join us if you just go to maxon.net and hit events, and that's where you'll see this Ask the Trainer link. Fantastic, great. So a couple of questions that came in about the different subject matters and can we cover different topics, and that's what we're trying to do over the complete canon, if you like, of all our sessions. So those are all really useful, and we appreciate that input. But if you want to ask us something more detailed as well, there's a little survey that comes up at the end of the webinars. Just pop a note on those, and we read those all every week, and we take note, and that's part of the reason why we started doing the Ask the Trainer session, just because there was so many questions about, hey, can you answer this outside your current topic that you're covering, and it's a balance. We try not to overrun. Let's look at the clock. Oh, we maybe slightly. But we also don't want to go too slowly, but we don't want to go too fast. So that's why we're kind of trying out new things as we go along. So thank you for bearing with us. Great, and thank you for the kind comments as well. Lots of nice comments about saying excellent presentation and great stuff today. And this is so valuable for all us users. So really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Great, so stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you, Darrin, Elly, and Jonas, and Matt as well for helping out. It's we couldn't do this without you lot, so thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, it's a team effort, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll see you on Thursday, hopefully. But stay well and stay healthy. Right.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.